Previously on the Game On podcast.
Aishi, now we just thought we'd go through a few things. So, and it is a funny story of how you first found out. Fill the listeners in there with and what you thought was happening at the time, Michael.
Well, I was sitting in the office, got a phone call, and thought it was Patrick Keane ringing up about Gather Round, who he had rang me previously, obviously, with James coming over from Freo to play at Norwood and
play at the home of football. Yes, yep,
yes. So I thought, okay, and then it was Richard Gorder actually ringing, and I excused myself from the office and went into the store, and it was about 20 seconds in, and just all of a sudden it dawned on me that, hang on a minute, they're actually inducting me into the Hall of Fame. And yes, got very, very choked up. I couldn't really speak for probably about 20 seconds, obviously, because my thoughts went straight to my father, and he was good, and he just no, all good. And then I twigged, and I said, "Oh, fan, yeah, okay." And then probably it took. Well, then Richard said, he said, "Well, do you accept?" He actually.
Unfortunately, you've got to ask Norwood people that question, Michael. Yeah.
Apparently so.
Yeah. Yes.
So that was pretty well it. And then he said, "Look, we'll be in touch with you." And I think they were softening a few people up because they invited me to gather around with the dinner, and Gil was there and welcomed a lot of past players, AFL players, and mentioned me in there. So I think he was sort of buttering him up to think maybe I don't know, but anyway, it was very much of a shock, let me tell you.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete. Once again, joined by Malcolm. And Malcolm, it's been a couple of weeks since we've been in the studio to record, but Michael Aish was kind enough to give us his time and talk about his induction into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the overdue induction, and Aish is always humble, and just enormous respect for Michael. And it's been a while. It's been a couple of big weeks, Pete.
It has. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Around the grounds.
Today, mate, we're going to talk obviously about the AFL, the SANFL, but first we must pay tribute. I want to play a couple of bits of audio and I'll get you to comment, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Now, some sad news yesterday. South Australia has lost one of its great personalities, a man who did more than anyone to help turn a good football club into a great football club. I'm talking here about Fred Chocka Bloch, who for years was the administrator of the Adelaide University Blacks, the footy club. Hundreds and hundreds of people have played for their many teams in their many divisions over the years. Fred Chocka Bloch, as he's known, there's a superb piece written by a former Blacks player called Malcolm Rulebook Ashwood, Rulebook being the mandated nickname that every Blacks player has. It's been reposted on the Footy Almanac, which is a great sort of grassroots football website, telling Chocka's life story, how he started off as a student at Adelaide Boys High, then worked for the National Bank, which is now the NAB, he was offered a chance to study for an economics degree because he was a brilliant mathematician. He graduated with honours, and when he was working at the bank, he basically had this sort of life-changing moment where he decided that he didn't want to work there. He was bored with the job. And he was friends with Professor Jeff Harcourt, who's the father of Tim Harcourt, who a lot of you might know. Professor Harcourt, he arranged for Fred to get some work lecturing at Adelaide Uni in the Commerce Department, where he eventually got involved in the club. This is some of what Malcolm Rulebook Ashwood says in the piece. It is his role and involvement becoming the head administrator, spiritual leader, guru, tribal elder, and overall most important person in the world's greatest footy club, the Adelaide University Football Club, which I wish to expand on. At footy clubs, it's impossible to give people and players the appropriate recognition. Chocka, however, always seemed to give the worst player in the club more respect than the best player. While every Blacks player, past and present, cares about the success of the A-grade side, the club's folklore has been built on a vigorous sense of the ridiculous and an ethos that showers glory on the meek and demands humility of the mighty. There's no better example of this ethos than the cult of Bob Neal, which Chocka embraced immediately. He was in reality the main instigator of the Bob Neal myth. The rest of us were simply willing disciples. One person who did spend, and indeed still does, spend a lot of time with the Blacks is our Premier, Peter Malinauskas, who played for the Scum. Spoke to him last night, and of Fred Chocka Bloch, Mally said he was an absolute true legend who created a culture unlike any other. So if you have any memories of Fred Bloch that you do want to share, ping us a text or give us a call. But a great life, a great man, and they'll be holding a special one-off edition of Hold Your Bowlies up in the sky tonight to commemorate the arrival of a bloke who meant so much to so many South Australian men and also women, because the club was a trailblazer of women's football as well.
Mm. Malcolm Ashwood is a great Adelaide Uni man, no doubt wants to pay tribute to Chocka Bloch, who passed away over the last day or so. Malcolm, welcome.
Yeah, g'day, Leaf. How are you, mate?
Good, thanks. How are
you? Pretty, sad occasion, obviously, but something we've been preparing for and expecting for a while. Dementia is a bastard of a disease. So the great man didn't know who anyone was in the end. So it is a blessing in that way.
Yep.
Look, Chocka's had a profound influence on me and many, hundreds of men and young men throughout the years, and that he was unique. He probably treated the worst player in the club with more respect than the best player, which is probably a good reason why I got on well with him, Leaf.
Yes.
I was his right-hand man for 33 years. He was gregarious, mixed with anyone. He wrote the history book, the book of the history of the amateur league, and so I think there was 94 clubs. So Chocka would have contacts with every single club. I think I've been contacted, by about 15 to 20 countries. A guy wants to fly back from India for the funeral, from England.
Wow.
America. So it's just huge, A couple of funny ones, Chocka. I basically had two rules when I got married, Leaf. It wouldn't be in a church, and the Chocka was MC. So Chocka did up a book of rules for the wedding, and he got up and said, Rule 13.22, not normally needed at a wedding, but playing his 100th game today, so winning 2 jugs of beer, courtesy of, and the footy table yelled out, Mr. and Mrs. Bertram, goes to Paul Hightop Baker, and Bakes walked up, grabbed the mic and said, I'd like to thank everyone coming for my 100th game dinner, especially people I've never met before. I think head waiter Rubble, you could have invited a few more of my mates. Standing ovation from the footy table, stunned silence from the rest. Emma did like bake, so that was fine, and Emma's dad was pissing himself laughing.
That's awesome.
We were at Sydney IV, and Chocka's walked up to buy a butcher, and bar lady didn't really know what she was doing, and asked Chocka, how much is that? And he said 20 cents. And he walked back and said, boys, get on the butchers. And we drank the Sydney Uni Bar dry butchers that day, mate.
You must have the greatest culture at Adelaide Uni, so we know what it means to the Premier, and Tim Harcourt's going to join me, of course, a great uni man at 9:30. Cam Mudge, who's the boss of Channel 10, used to work here with us. He sent me a message. He said, sad day losing Chocka. He was a legend of the Mighty Blacks and influential to so many young people via his role at uni, commerce and club legend. Created the legend that is Bob Neal.
Yeah, he certainly did. He was the ringleader. The rest of us were just willing disciples. A couple of people may have had parents in court due to it. Yeah, welcome to Bob Neal City, spray painted out. I thought they were improving the Grand Junction wall out by by the Jets Cross Hotel out there, but the judge had played for uni, so he did see the funny side of it as well. So
he said one of the great humans going around. What was he like as a player, SANFL? So North Adelaide fans would remember Chocka Bloch?
Oh, very much so. So he won North Best and Fairest in 65. Runner-up in 66. He popped pretty high in the Magarey one year, but as Chocka's always used to say, Barry Robin came down, I saw him playing a reserves game, and I promptly retired. Barry's emailed me 3 times since yesterday, so you can't get any higher than that.
Yeah, that's right.
The great man, and that. So he emailed me a couple of weeks ago, and I pretended I was going back to bed, and Emma said, what the hell are you doing? I said, well, Barry Robbins emailed, but they can only go downhill from here.
Well, you can't not. Yeah. Hey, even Keith Conlon, I spoke to Keith today about Chocka, and he was saying he was reading the article that you'd written too. Where can people find that and read? Yeah,
on the Footy Almanac site. I'll send through the link to you now.
I'll post it
on your email address.
Yep.
But, if you go on the Footy Almanac site, and just go down. It's probably about the 5th or 6th article, a tribute to Fred Bloch. You can't miss it, but I'll send it through to you now as well, Lee.
I'll share it too.
I admit it is my first article in my book. It was always going to be chapter 1.
Well done. Malcolm, sorry for the loss. As I say, I spoke to a number of people today, and everyone was just high regard. Never got the chance to meet him, or one of those ones now you look back in hindsight. I know he'd been sick, so we always had a list for conversations of great South Australians that Cornsey wanted to speak to, and that's one that unfortunately got away from us. But anyway, great memories, I'm sure.
Oh, look, it is. I probably really have been off either my phone or iPad for 3 hours since 10:15 yesterday.
Yep. Wow. So, that says a lot about a man, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Will he have some sort of?
Link now, mate.
Thank you. Will he have some sort of, big farewell at the university, or do you know?
Yes, there's a couple of things. So I'm meeting up with the Bloch family and Berries tomorrow. So we'll work that all out tomorrow. Okay. But it'll also be another one at uni as well. Oh, but it will be a big funeral and a huge. I'm sure the wake will go for ages where we all get around and tell Chocka and Bob Neal's stories.
Yeah, for sure. Well done. Malcolm, thanks for that. Appreciate it,
mate.
Malcolm Ashwood, Rulebook as he's affectionately known, long-time caller and contributor to the show, and a bit of Adelaide Uni royalty himself. Thank you, Malcolm. Appreciate that.
Now, mate, I know it's a pretty big week, and we thank Radio 5AA for that little clips there that we're able to put on our podcast. Mate, I'll let you take the floor. I didn't know Chocka, but I'm sure you've got some words that you'd like to say and pass on to the listeners.
Oh, look, it's been a huge couple of weeks. I'll be honest, I had a pretty major part in everything with it all. I probably deep down knew I was probably going to run Chocka's funeral for about 25 years. There's about 600 people there in the end. Viewing... It's probably a little bit different now with funeral numbers because so many people now watch it online.
Yep.
And that'll continue on. Mm-hmm. And look, when you get Alex Forster from Berries with a funeral, and obviously I know Alex played in Norwood's 2014 flag.
Yep.
I think that was part of the reason why he got given the role with it. And when you get a funeral, they see 8 million funerals respond. That was just so classy. And he just said, we don't always listen to eulogies. And I said, of course not. You hear 8 million. But I said it was a little bit different for you because it was a chance for you to learn about an SA footy legend. And he said exactly that. He said Simon, the first job, when Simon gave Alex the job with it, said, right, you've got to read Rulebook's article. And he went, shit. And let's just say the Premier did help as well. Leave it at that in that regard. Huge respect for Mally.
Now, obviously, we heard during the interviews there that, people like Barry Robran, contacted
Barry,
you. I'm sure you had a million messages.
Yeah.
I know that
Barry did come to the funeral, so, that was... And probably Suzanne stole the line. Was probably my favourite line out of all the eulogies where... Because it was a fine, lovely day on Wednesday that she thanked Barry for providing the weather. And, of course, that got a fair laugh and that from the audience. And, Tim Harcourt and myself have both posted our eulogies on the Footy Almanac site. It is a big hold your bowlies tonight. Tell you what, Pete, if you're doing nothing tonight, come along because you will piss yourself laughing. It's a really old style. There's been a couple of new songs written about Chocka will get released tonight. Anyone out there at the Cathedral tonight from about 6:30, anyway, 7 o'clock, anyone's welcome, and it'll be a big night. And look, yes, the wake was huge. I did say to a guy at the Cathedral as I was 10-ish, it's a bit busier than a normal Wednesday, and let's just say his reply was colourful, and the Cathedral were quite happy on Thursday. That probably gives a bit of an indication on the night.
Now, Chocka, again, you made mention that, suffering from dementia. It's a cruel disease that unfortunately gets so many people in the end, and him not knowing certain people at certain times would be frustrating, from family and friends. It
was gut-wrenching to watch. At the end, he didn't even know his own family in the end. Yeah. Look, the last time I saw him, I think, and I'm certainly believe this, and bugger whether it's true or not, I reckon he recognised me as I was leaving. Sorry.
No, mate, by all means, things work in mysterious ways, and, we've all had people who have been in that situation, or most people know what it's like, and sometimes that little spark, that little glimmer can certainly lighten your day, and it's something that you're going to fondly remember.
Yeah, look, he's my hero. I'm privileged that I had two mentors apart from my parents in Marty Bradshaw and Chocka, and privileged to be asked to do eulogies at both funerals means a lot to me.
Absolutely. And the other tragedy that's befallen us in the last week or so, and sort of put us on our asses a little bit here, was Nick Lowden from the Norwood Footy Club passing away quite tragically and quite suddenly.
Yeah, look, when I got a call about it on the Thursday night, I was actually writing stuff about Chocka at the time, and that certainly went by the window that night. And I said to him, I'm going for a walk for a fair while, and yeah, look, incredibly courageous family coming out. There's more things gradually coming out. We still don't, while there's been enormous progressions mental health wise, there's still a long way to go, and there's still. And it's both sexes. Yes, stats do say it's more in males. We know that. But it's still both sexes who still struggle to say, I'm not okay. And, it's shattering. I'm sure his parents have received 8 million messages at the moment. I'm actually going to touch base with him in a couple of months. I think I want to have a conversation in a couple of months.
I did notice that in today's Advertiser there was an article about it, and obviously, pointing out the hurdles and the stresses that come along with mental health, and again, we've had on this program many a times, we've opened up the forum and said, look, it's a place where we want to get the conversation started, and obviously keep that going, and hopefully it does help somebody along the line, and even if it is to reach out to one of us just to have a quick conversation or pull us up at a footy game or whatever, we're more than happy to
I'm just glad too that the parents have been so open. I'm really forthright on that. I admit I've only got one male member of my wedding party left.
Yep.
And I think back to things then, and it's 15 years since Pete now, and it just doesn't. It doesn't help or achieve anything by hiding it. And I just think We've still got a long way to talk more.
Absolutely. All right, mate. We might take a quick break. It's been a pretty heavy set to start us off, and we'll reset and have a little bit of a look at the AFL and the SANFL games, and try and liven up the day a little bit, mate.
Thanks, mate.
No worries.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Mate, to continue our Around the Grounds today, we're going to also have a bit of a chat with Greg Smith. We did actually record this a little while ago, and we've had it up our sleeve for an occasion where, we were running short on guests or time, and unfortunately the last 3 or 4 weeks for both of us have
nothing's worked out.
Nothing's sort of worked out, but we've got an interview with Greg, and he was fantastic. But, mate, let's get started with the AFL. We'll go back to round 21. Some interesting results along the way. We'll go through them one by one. The Bulldogs defeating Richmond by 55 points.
I thought it was a little bit weird that Richmond supposedly rested Martin with they had to win to still have a faint chance. It was so that was a bit bizarre for mine. So
do you think there was a McQualter call on that, or was that more of a medical staff or a head trainer or fitness?
I'd say medical side of things, but it's sort of really. From the outside, didn't make much sense. I dare say he's probably carrying more of an injury than what Richmond let on.
Yep.
But, it was a bit weird.
The Bulldogs are a little bit of that tease, aren't they? They produce really, really well some weeks, and then other weeks they just let you down a little bit. But
their best is more than competitive.
Yes.
You're more than competitive.
But
their worst...
but they're in that group of about 6 or 8 teams that when they're on, geez, they're bloody good. And when they're not, it's a little bit of a...
As we remember, though, 16, you've only got to have a month on in September.
Yep.
And they managed to do it. And, they nearly did it a couple of years ago until Melbourne played probably the best quarter and a half footy any of us have ever seen.
Yes. Especially in the grand final.
Oh.
Mate, Essendon just getting over West Coast by a point. This was the big surprise for me.
Yeah, they were so lucky.
Now, I have to ask, and you being the rule book and the official of the umpiring, that ball up that went 5 metres forward and sideways should have been recalled. I mean, the obvious one is yes.
Yes, and get rid of the bounce. I don't get it. We're the only sport in the world where you've got to try and perfect the skill as an umpire, which has nothing to do with the game.
Yep.
Why we don't just throw it up all the time and have the best decision makers out there? And okay, people can whinge, it's tradition, but I'm sorry. Do you leave a game of footy and go, shit, wasn't the umpires bouncing brilliant today?
Yeah.
It's a load of crap.
Absolutely. Yes, West Coast almost pulled off the impossible, and Essendon almost buggered up the impossible.
Yeah.
But again, bad kicking, bad results, 10-13 to 11-6. So accurate kicking from West Coast kept them in it.
Yeah, they just let a ball get out in the last minute too, where that should have been bottled up, held in.
Yep.
And Yep.
Adelaide defeating Gold Coast by 28 points.
Yeah. They did what they had to do. It wasn't a compelling performance by all means, but also, let's give the Jews their defence at the moment with the injuries they've had. So they've, most inexperienced defence in the competition by a long way. And Murray was online and be All-Australian. He was certainly going to be in the All-Australian squad of 40 and was a chance to make the All-Australian squad. So he's been a huge loss. Tom Dade, a big loss. And yes, I actually admit I was with him last night. And while he didn't say much, I'd love to have as much chance of winning Cross Lotto that he's going back to Victoria. So
right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I do want to sort of touch base. You've taken my thunder a little bit about the back line. Mickey Godden in the SANFL, I think, has a lot of credit too.
I agree.
That he has built the system with these guys who have spent the last probably 18 months to 2 years together, and it's meant that their transition into the AFL side has become relatively seamless. And then with all of these guys going down at once, it's meant that that system has actually stayed together.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how it goes today up in Brisbane. Danaher, Cameron, Hipwood, Bailey. They're a pretty fair McCarthy, fair Gunston. Mm-hmm. It's a potentially pretty dangerous forward line. Mm-hmm. But if Keane can manage to do a reasonable job on Danaher, Michael Annie, I would think, will go to Cameron.
Yep. Well, he's had the job before, so
Yeah,
you'd
I'm not
expect
sure
to get it
who'll
again.
get. Ball Ace might get Hipwood.
It's a real battle of the forward lines, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
You've got to think Brisbane will be too good, but it'll be just really interesting to see how that Adelaide forward line go.
Absolutely.
And I've also got another theory on that this week.
All right, we'll
Yep.
touch base on
Yep.
that one a little bit later. Nice little
Yep.
tease there.
Yep.
Hawthorn defeating Collingwood and really touching them up by 32 points.
Geez, they were good.
They were, weren't they?
Hawthorn's good is very good, but they're bad is terrible. And I think you can make claims on Sicily being the most important player in the competition.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as Collingwood have been brilliant, we can praise McRae, but I thought it was a bit arrogant to let Sicily go and not have someone play the defensive forward role on him. And I think they got what they deserved.
Absolutely. Port Adelaide just going down to Geelong by 12 points.
Yeah,
a valiant effort, really.
Yeah, it was, especially all the players they had out, and certainly didn't have much luck in the umpiring side of things either.
No.
It was a good effort. They get a fair few back this game. Still struggling in ruck, and also with Dixon now out for a month's big. So, yeah, but they were valiant.
Port Adelaide again in the SANFL have been around the mark. Again, same sort of situation where 5 or 6 come in. They have played together a little bit. So some similarities there between Adelaide and Port Adelaide. And like you said, very valiant effort down in Geelong. And Geelong are always tough to beat down there, except if you're a Fremantle at the moment.
Yeah, I think any side, though, with a midfield of Rosie, Butters and Jason Horne-France is going to be competitive with any side in the competition.
Absolutely. Sydney defeating GWS, keeping their hopes alive a little bit and putting GWS in a bit of a delicate situation.
Yeah, it was. It was a real massive 8-point game. The stats say GWS should have won. They had a truckload more inside 50s, more clearances, more this, more that. But they didn't kick the thing between the two big white things enough times.
Yeah, absolutely. Melbourne defeating North Melbourne, no surprises there. Carlton defeating St Kilda for
After
7 in a row.
Down, yeah, they were good after half-time. They really looked the better side, and St Kilda didn't look like they were going to score either, which they didn't. They kicked 1 goal after half-time.
Yeah. And to finish off, Brisbane just getting over Fremantle by 3 points.
Yeah, Freo more than had their chances in that game as well. So the big result for Brisbane to keep alive their chances of a top 2 finish.
Absolutely. All right, we move on to round 22. Collingwood versus Geelong. We're recording a little bit later than usual, so we've already got the result of this game.
Yeah,
but
we can pretend that we tipped the margin and everything, yeah.
Absolutely. Between 1 and 10 points, maybe.
I'll tip the Pies to get up by 8 points, mate.
Okay, winner, chicken dinner. Geelong were fantastic early on, being 4 or 5 goals up, and Collingwood really just chipped away and really got their running game and opened it up. And for about a quarter and a half, Geelong couldn't score.
It's ironic too, Moore getting injured, so Ginnivan comes on as sub, so they go back to their real small forward line.
And it was potent,
from the start
wasn't
of the year, and it was just it was potent, but also with the defensive pressure. I've only seen bits of it because I commentated the wheelchair footy grand final last night. Mm-hmm. Congratulations to Sturt,
yes,
going back to back to back. So congrats there, getting up by a goal. We had about 350 people out at Lights View. So yeah, but congratulations in that way.
Yep.
I would have got shot if I hadn't mentioned that by a few of the boys.
No, that's all right. We'll cover that in the SANFL a little bit in a minute. But, certainly Collingwood stamping their throw. I thought this was a bit of a danger game with them, with Dacos obviously getting injured in the previous game. A couple of little structural errors, and then Moore goes down early. Didn't look good, but every time I kept sort of flipping back to it because I was watching a little bit of the soccer as well. Collingwood just seemed to be just getting on top. So, mate, an 8-point victory for Collingwood there, and you tipped the margin beautifully. All right, we move on. North Melbourne v Essendon, Marvel Stadium.
Well, you've got to go for Essendon, but, geez, it is danger for them as well. North Melbourne were better in the first half last week with Clarkson's return, but then fell away. Mm-hmm. They've got some talent with their youngsters, but just don't seem to be able to prolong it. But, while you've got to go with Essendon, you give the Roos a slight outside chance.
Absolutely. I'm in the same boat that it is a bit of a danger game, and teams like North Melbourne and Hawthorn and A couple of those teams that are 16th, 17th, 18th, you've got nothing to lose at the moment, and they can start trying a few things, and it can upset a few teams like Essendon and Sydney and Adelaide and Gold Coast and all those teams that are vying for that 8th spot. So it'll be interesting. All right, Sydney versus Gold Coast.
You've got to go for Sydney. I think King being out for Gold Coast is a big out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's going to be a tough, hard, contested game. I mean, we've seen Gold Coast over the last 6 or 8 weeks have shown a real competitive brand of football that has stood up. Yes, they did get opened up a little bit by Adelaide last week, but it was more about them butchering the ball rather than the contested possession, because once they got that back into kilter, they went with Adelaide pretty much for the rest of the game.
It's a bit of fun. I umpired Adelaide Uni B-grade girls game last week, and at Uni at Bob Neal at Chocka Bloch Oval, which was actually ironic and appropriate because I hadn't umpired on that oval before, so there was a bit of synergy there. But you can predict the score with the Raws, which come over from Adelaide Oval.
Ah, yes.
And so I walked up and said, right, Louis, it was James Lewis' 300th game last week, so Louis clicked on his phone to see the score, and I was 4 points out. So it's quite funny that it is really easy that you're around the mark.
Yes,
all the time with
absolutely. The big one for Adelaide Crows supporters versus Brisbane tonight. It's going to clash a little bit with the Matildas, but
that is my theory. I think with it clashing with Matildas game, there'll be a lot of Brisbane members won't go. They'll be at the Matildas game. So while Brisbane will still have a bit more support, it'll probably be the closest it'll be to 50-50 support. The Adelaide support is going up. They're going up for the footy. So I actually think it may help Adelaide to some extent.
Absolutely. And just on that, a couple of Adelaide players named in the 22 for the under-22s.
Yeah.
4 players from the Crows. I was just looking for the article that I did see that on that got released yesterday. I think they're in good hands.
Yeah, Murray there.
Yep.
Look, I think it probably showed also when I looked at it that there's not that many big guys under 22 have had good years. So looking at it, I thought, my initial here on Phil thought making the squad, that I thought, he hasn't had a good enough year. Yeah, hasn't been consistent enough. But it's actually out of him and Ryan from Richmond for the other spot as the tall.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he might make the side.
Yeah.
So,
And obviously it's a provisional squad of 40 at the moment, but good to see Adelaide and Port Adelaide, I think, had 3 in there as well. Only one club didn't register a player in that, and that was West Coast. And it's probably endemic of where they're at the moment, their age profile, their list, so totally understandable for sure.
Yeah.
Carlton v Melbourne. This one's going to be an absolute belter. You got the soccer on, and then now you've got Carlton and Melbourne going head-to-head. Clearly the 2 form sides at the moment.
Yeah, it's a real toss of the coin. I just was really impressed with Carlton last week, and ironically, a guy who's being mentioned around the trade traps, and Paddy Dow was very important for Carlton last week. I think he's a better player than they're giving him credit for internally. So it's fascinating in that way where he's going to end up. I'll tip Carlton there, but I think it's a toss of the coin job.
What's changed for Carlton since the mid-season break? Obviously they were very slow, very stagnant, very predictable before the bye, and all of a sudden the bye's come along. They've tweaked it a little bit, and it's opened up to what they were sort of doing a little bit last year.
It's ironic that McKay getting injured has seemed to have helped them, not hurt them. It's he's kicking for goal, which, let's be honest, was
subpar at best. Yep.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you certainly didn't want to be on backing him.
Yep.
So they're certain, and they're probably the smoky out of the top 4 at the moment.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, they're certainly the form side, and I'm as happy as Larry that they've gone from 15th in the space of 7 weeks to 5th or 4th at the time, and really pushing those top 4 sides. And to finish us off, this one snuck up on me a little bit. Normally we get a little bit more excitement around it, is the Western Derby, West Coast versus Freo.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it? That's normally one of the big games of the year where it's sort of the Mickey Mouse Cup. West Coast almost better off losing it to keep bottom spot. And, it's... Well, and I'm looking at their list. I can't see how they're not down for a fair while. I reckon at the moment, if you're having a look through, I'm saying only West Coast and North Melbourne can't make the 8 next year.
Yep.
So, which is great for the competition.
Well, yeah, it isn't. Our West Coast, what's the word I'm looking for? Our West Coast not tanking to get those priority picks, but their mismanagement of their list and their age profile has been horrendous.
Yeah, terrible.
How somebody hasn't had one eye on the future and one eye on now is staggering, really, in a professional sport. And let's face it, it is a professional sport now. Where you need to manage it.
Yeah, no, it's been bizarre. So they've carried a lot of guys with injuries on their list. Natanui is still on their list. Hasn't played, and it seems like he might still be on their list next year. Yayo's always injured. Luke Shuey, Hearn, older guys carrying injuries. McGovern, and it's just. You're looking, there's not real much youth coming through.
Is it a case of a wink and a nod going, you've looked after us, during those premiership years or those finals years, we'll look after you now? And they've sort of got themselves in a big hole that is going to take a lot to get them out of.
It's a bloody big hole too.
Freo, again, my Jekyll and Hyde team, they, again, can play some very good football and also can be a little bit loose at times. Could they drop this game? No, fair call. All right, let's move on. SANFL, round 15 games. Sturt defeating Woodville West Torrens.
Yeah, I was interested talking to a couple of Woodville West Torrens officials last night where they said they didn't think either team was that great. Both teams. Sturt, they've had a bit of a lull where they can then come out of it and see how they go on the big grounds. Mm-hmm. Test for them today at Elizabeth at the Ponderosa. So see how they go there.
Yep. Going back, obviously, there was a bye week there that Adelaide defeated Port Adelaide quite convincingly in the pre-showdown.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and they did win really easily, and it looked like at one stage Port weren't going to kick a goal.
Yep.
Craig Burton and North Adelaide from 89 was certainly
ringing in the ears of a few people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. South Adelaide defeating West Adelaide.
Yeah, and good to see Jack Deline. They kicked a couple and debut. Commentated a few 18s games. Watched him. He'll go pretty high in the draft. It'll be interesting to see today at Norwood. Bit cloudy and wet outside as we're here this morning. Geez, I hope it clears because there's nothing worse than being on the scoreboard when it's wet at Norwood.
Yeah, I was going to touch base on that.
So it'll be interesting to see how Jack goes today. So, yeah, it's funny when interest almost as much as an opposition player today. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Norwood defeating the Bulldogs in a rugged contest out at the parade.
We should have won easily. Norwood had a lot of the ball early but butchered it.
Mm-hmm. It's been systematic all year. That's exactly right.
We lack synergy in forward. We lack a key forward. I'm mystified that Liam Robinson has been dropped today. I'm stunned by that and disappointed and disagree with it. So we'll see how he goes in the Magoos. So,
and Glenelg continue on their winning ways, defeating North Adelaide.
They're well and truly the team to beat. And look, I will say, and this probably hasn't received the coverage because SANFL is no longer the big deal. Mm-hmm. After the Glenelg North game, which was played at the same time as the Norwood Central's game, Suzanne and Robin Bloch wanted me to come to Prospect, so I went out there. And as I was driving, I'm thinking, bloody hell, I reckon it's their 2018 Premiership reunion. Sure enough, I got there. And it was on the big screen. I thought, bloody hell. And, of course, I walk in. I'm obviously the only person in Norwood gear.
Yes.
And, look, I'll give Josh Carr and Jacob Surgeon their due. We played around, and I put last year's grand final on, put the Kings goal on, and Cameron Craig, who was standing the King at that stage, and I coach Cam in cricket and get on really well with him, and he's piss off Malcolm. I never want to see that again. And so it was a good bit of banter.
Yes.
But the bit out of that, it told as I got there, and the blocks were outside on the new balcony part. So I was there with them, and so I was going to go inside for a while, and someone said, someone from Glenelg's collapsed inside. And I thought, might be an older trainer or older. And then I got in, someone said, no, it's actually Luke Partington. Now, I know Luke from Norwood.
Mm-hmm.
So I did glimpse over. I walked over and it was scary. It didn't look like someone who was just crook. It looked like someone who, hurry up.
Yep.
And they'd rung for an ambulance, and an ambulance was taking ages. And I actually said to a Glenelg person, bugger that, someone hurry up and get him into hospital now. And so it was really scary. Now, Glenelg have come out and said he's had a reaction to his vegan diet.
Mm-hmm.
I take that with a bit of grain of salt.
Yep.
Because of how bad he looked and how scary it was. It wasn't just someone had fainted and give him a drink of water and they'll be okay in a few minutes. He looked way worse than that. And, and he is playing in today. I did check there. So all the best to Luke. But, it wasn't it was a scary situation to be at.
Absolutely.
And well done, North Adelaide cancelled their presentations.
Yep.
So that all the North guys came outside of the balcony to give some more air and let people be able to get in there properly and all that. So full credit to Craig Burt and North Adelaide, but and Malcolm Ellis as well. Malcolm Ellis spoke at Chocka's funeral on behalf of North Adelaide as well and spoke fantastically and educated us all a bit of a North bit. I actually then filled him in a bit on Chocka's own career he didn't know about.
Yep.
So it was good.
Mate, the SANFL clubs are doing a great thing at the moment. Every club you seem to go to, there's a great vibe. There's a lot of, like you said, good banter and continuity between the clubs and sharing facilities and inviting, like you said, inviting players and inviting other clubs to join. And
look, it was really
it's a real good community.
Because I turned my back to the screen on the 18 and Jacob Surgeons yelled out as Boyd Woodcock kicked the goal. Malcolm, turn around. I'm sure you want to see Boyd's goal. And so it was really good fun, and it's how it should be.
Absolutely. You did mention a little bit earlier on, but I think it's probably poignant that we talk about it before we move on to this week's rounds of SANFL games. Sturt winning the Wheelchair League for the third time in a row.
Yeah, the Eagles were a couple of goals up, but Matt Gregory, who is the Barry Robber and Don Bradman of the competition, got on top in the middle. I didn't think the Eagles played it as well as they could have. Mm-hmm. It's a very tactical game, wheelchair footy. And if anyone wants to go on, it's still available on the SANFL now. Click on and have a look. It is a fascinating sport, and it is so quick. The blocking and tactics off the ball is quite incredible. And look, watching the Paralympics at home, and I'm saying to Emma, right, they'll do this. And she said, well, how do you know that? And I said, because if I'm commentating the wheelchair footy.
You sort of see it,
And I love the sport. I love the inclusiveness of it.
Yep.
Everyone knows each other. There'll be opponents in that, but playing wheelchair basketball together on a Tuesday night. So it's a little bit different in that way. Mm-hmm. But game was played in pretty good spirit. And, Sturt, we're on the right side of it in the end. I ended up with the Woodville West Torrens guys afterwards. Like how Steve Edges pulled up this morning. Let's just say he went on my theory that when you lose, you go hard.
Yes.
And Edgy was well and truly on top for the 3 votes. Trev Jarrett, the rookie, was a lot more measured than what Edgy was.
Maybe touch base on Monday morning rather than Sunday morning. Congratulations to the Sturt Footy Club on winning 3 premierships in a row there. Well done to Sue and Renee.
And Budgie Avery, the captain, Matty Gregory, Hallam, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. The whole Sturt side. But as I said, one kicking 7 of their goals, but Matt Gregory, honestly, have a look. He is as good a long handballer. I actually made a comment to Marty Matner. It's similar to Gary McIntosh, some of his long handballs out of the chair, and he's a freak.
Congratulations to Sturt again. All right, we move on to this week's rounds. Nord v the Panthers at Cooper Stadium.
Yeah, heading there from here. Look, toss the coin. We are probably obviously more competitive. We did beat them down at the Ponderosa, so I'll go for Nord in that. To do it for Nick today. I'm sure it's going to be a really emotional day.
Yep.
Probably a bit over that at the moment. It's been a bit too much emotion in the last fortnight for me, but it will be an emotional day, and just
good to get out and yell at a few things, and obviously you're on the scoreboard as well.
Yeah.
So the Bulldogs playing Sturt out at Ex-Convenience Oval.
Yeah, real test for Sturt. Centrals have been good at home this year. I'll go for the Dogs there.
Ooh, upset, man.
Yeah, I'll go for an upset.
Going to be a tight game, I think. And again, weather's going to play a little bit of a part in this. We're looking out the window now in the studio. It's clearing a little bit, but it's still a little bit grey. Exactly right.
I'm nervous. I'll put it that way. I admit I've probably got enough clothes for the. I've got a well and truly a changeover of clothes ready to go to the cathedral afterwards. So,
fair call.
Yes.
Port Adelaide v the Tigers out at Alberton Oval.
Yeah, I'll go for Glenelg. You just can't.
Hard to go against them at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't not tip Glenelg. So
this one's got a lot of interest for me. Woodville West Torrens v North Adelaide.
Yeah, I'll go for North, but
only just.
Yeah,
because it's down at
Pecker
Oval
Park
Avenue.
At Oval Avenue, where the pasties are always spicier from Mike Coward. One of my favourite ever lines.
That's because it's closest to Villiers, which is one of their sponsors.
Mike Coward was brilliant with that. A huge influence on Michael Aish as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll go for North, but yeah, I'd certainly give the Eagles a chance.
Absolutely. And the last game of the round, West Adelaide v Adelaide.
Yeah, at Murray Bridge on Sunday. You've obviously got to tip Adelaide.
Mm-hmm. So I think so.
I may end up on the Woodville West Torrens boys, the wheelchair side, a guest of the club down there tomorrow, so I might wander down there. Yep.
All right, and just to give you a quick ladder update, Glenelg, Sturt, Adelaide, Port Adelaide, and Central's just inside the 5. North Adelaide is probably really the only team that could sneak into the 5 now. Unfortunately, Woodville West Torrens, who I thought were going to be a lot higher than they were, are going to miss out. South Adelaide, Norwood, and West Adelaide make up the top 10 there for the SANFL. All right, mate, we're going to take a very quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to whiz through our next lot of topics, and then we'll get on to Greg Smith.
Yep. You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
All right, mate, we'll go back to the cricket. We haven't touched on the cricket for a few weeks because obviously we've been injured and family and funerals and it's just been a nightmare. Yep. The Ashes, the men's team retained the Ashes, but it wasn't really convincing.
No, it wasn't, but there were just times in there where we were just dumb. The third test when we lost, we had England 7 for 140, and this bold bouncer garbage instead of aiming at the 3 wooden bits and removing Bold and LBW out of the equation. It effectively almost caught behind and slips removed as well.
Absolutely.
It was just bizarre. I just don't understand it. I actually turned off in frustration at one stage for a cricket moron like myself to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. And then the fourth test, obviously we were lucky with the rain there. And then the last test, the Australia were unlucky where it rained on the fourth day when we were right on top.
Yep.
If Warner and Quadra kept going there, it probably would have been enough. And then the bizarre changing of the ball where it went to virtually a new, agate out. It was...
We'll talk about that one a little bit later in our extra time big finish, but it does scratch a lot of heads. That's exactly right. The women's Ashes wasn't convincing in the end either. This is a bit of a trait that we started and faltered towards the end of the tour.
Yeah, we did. Look, I think people probably underestimated Meg Lemming, how important she was to the side. She's probably Australia's best batter as well. Not only the captain, but best batter. I think Healy's captaincy was fine in it, and that. But to lose her, I think really our batting got exposed a bit. Unfortunately, Talia McGrath didn't have a consistent series overall.
Yep.
Probably needed a bit more from her. And, we had bits and pieces without a couple of players getting a big score to get them home.
It just wasn't convincing,
Yeah.
in the end. But again, we retain the Ashes. So both the men's and the women's retain the Ashes, and it's proving to be could be a spicy Ashes coming up here in Australia in a few years' time.
Yeah.
Now, the upcoming T20 and ODI squads were announced during the week. A couple of admissions there. Marcus Labuschagne was one of them.
Yeah, no, that didn't surprise me. I've got to be honest there. His one-day record's not great. It's okay. He wasn't a certainty. I think Stoinis is probably the lucky selection again.
Yep.
He's still managing to really get picked on in innings from about 6 years ago.
Well, that happened with...
I'm more convinced in Stoinis as a 2020 player than I am as a one-day player.
Watson.
Yeah,
that happened with Watson.
So, look...
Is it a case that Australia are actually getting a little bit more proactive and picking horses for courses rather than you're already in that team and doing okay, so we'll transfer your skills over to another format?
I think a little bit, but I think also what we've been worried about as cricket people around the traps for a long time is the standards fallen away everywhere else, and I think it's now coming through and at the top level has been caught up as well with the standards falling away a bit, Cricket's an expensive game. We're all working. It's Saturday's no longer a day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all those things. And I think it's now finally where it's really hit it at the underneath levels. I think it's now catching up to the top level. So
there you go. All right, mate. Netball. Australia wins the World Cup in South Africa, defeating England.
Yeah, always nice to beat England.
Absolutely.
And,
another Ashes test there that's gone our way.
They'd lost to England in the qualification period, but then came out and won the final pretty convincingly after England had beaten New Zealand in the semi. So
I did actually watch that game, and that was quite entertaining.
Yeah.
It's not a non-physical sport. Those girls go flat chat the entire time.
Yeah, non-contact sport for netball is quite an amusing faux pas, really.
Yes, absolutely. You're right, Australia doing very, very well there. Probably the two toughest games, like most, are a semi-final or a prelim final. And then Australia got the job done in the final, which you sort of expected was going to happen. But, they're after a little bit of redemption too.
Yep.
And to finish us off on Around the Grounds, Australia, the World Cup, it's taken everybody by storm here at the moment. The AFL's looking to move some games back a little bit to be able to get the telecast in and produce it on all the grounds in Australia that have got games on today or tonight.
I take that with a grain of salt from the AFL. As we know, AFL panic about any coverage of any other sport.
Yes.
And let's remember back to the men's World Cup where the AFL released news at 6:45 on a Sunday morning, which I thought was just absolutely pathetic.
Yes.
It was juvenile garbage trying to take away coverage from soccer, and it was bizarre. So, I take the AFL saying they're going to fit around it with more than a grain of salt.
Fair call. Sam Kerr, obviously best player in the world. We didn't find out that she was injured until half an hour before the first game. Obviously, that was done tactically. I sort of understand that part of it. Didn't play in the second game. Got a little bit of a run in the third, and now we're looking at potentially having her start. But have we relied on one player for too long?
I think the hard bit about that is because it doesn't get the overall publicity until a World Cup. So Fowler and people like that, we've heard a little bit about them, but unless you're a fanatical follower of the Matildas, there's some of the people who are in that, they're saying we're not surprised we've coped without Kerr, that we have got lots of other bloody good players, but they just don't get the coverage of Sam, and because she's and that's not Sam's fault. She's the poster girl, and she is brilliant.
I think it's been that catch-22 that she hasn't been available. The side has actually performed pretty well, but she is that X factor, and you really need in these big tournaments. You need to have that X factor of a player. Knockouts, obviously Australia playing France. How do you see us going? I mean,
we're underdogs. You've got to look at the world qualifications of where we are in the compared to France. France start favourite, but it is at home. So, toss the coin. Let's show parochialism and let's go for Australia.
Absolutely. Why not?
Yep.
Why not? All right, mate. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we were going to do the interview with Greg Smith, but we're actually going to hold that over to our midweek past players, past legends, because we've already gone pretty much over time, and it'll make this podcast way too long. So we'll skip into Happy Days.
Yep.
Happy Days.
All right, mate, we kick off Happy Days with happy birthday to Jack Lukosius, Gold Coast Suns. You've made mention, precocious Lukosius, but he's really established himself as a very, very good forward line player. Obviously, laconic, drafted from Woodville West Torrens.
It's a beautiful kick.
Yes.
I think it's going to be really interesting what happens next year, because Gold Coast get Walter out of the academy, and you watch this kid next year.
Yep.
I actually won't be surprised if Jack goes back. I won't be surprised if he's even played on the ball or on a wing or at half back to use his beautiful disposal again. So I think he might be used as the Mr. Fix-It everywhere.
Yep.
If he's still at Gold Coast. So, yeah, let's wait.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there, obviously, with new coach coming on board. Obviously, Adelaide and Port Adelaide are looking at attracting South Australians back to their clubs, so it's going to be a very interesting period. Obviously drafted from Woodville West Torrens in 2018, secured 21 games in his first season, and has played every game so far in 2023. So durable, good kick, Mr. Fix-It. What club wouldn't be looking at trying to get him through the door?
Exactly.
Edging on his 100th game, probably in 2024, but if Gold Coast make the finals, you never know, might go close.
Yep.
Kicked 36 goals also this year, which is his best in his career so far, but he has spent more time there.
Yep,
so
he's had a good year.
Totally understandable. 1989, Australia, none for 301 in day one of the fifth test at Trent Bridge.
Yeah, M. Taylor and Jeff Marsh, and Booney batting three, having the pads on all day. He would have been a bit dark about that because he could have gone to the bar otherwise.
Could have been a bit antsy.
No, it was incredible. The 89 series was just great. And then I think we declared around 600 odd, and of course then the predictable did happen. Gooch, LBW, Alderman, no score. So, yeah, it was an enjoyable series, that.
I wanted to add this to Happy Days. You know that I like doing a little bit of these research topics, but to bat shows some grit and resilience and no stupid play, really, at the end of the day. I'm sure, again, without watching that innings.
Mark Taylor was in incredible form. Let's not forget, he made the second most number of runs after Bradman in an Ashes series. He was unreal on that series, and Jeff Marsh was a ruthless competitor.
Absolutely. Australia none for 301 just seems like a massive score.
It was a very enjoyable day.
2002 golf British Open, women's British Open at the Turnberry Elisa Resort. Kari Webb wins by 2 strokes over fellow Australian Michelle Ellis and Paula Marti. Her fifth different major, which created the Grand Slam.
No, Kari Webb was a fantastic player. She was very technically correct as a golfer, very thought her way through every situation.
Doesn't always get the kudos in golfing circles. So for our golf followers out there, they'll know that Kari was certainly one of those players who was very thorough. You're right.
I reckon Craig might comment on our podcast in that regard when we post it.
Absolutely. World record at the time, 1984. Carl Lewis duplicates Jesse Owens' 1936 feat, winning his 4th Olympic gold medal, part of the US 4x100 relay of a record of 37.83 seconds. That is going like the wind.
Oh, incredible. It's just, he's one of the all-timers. He's up there.
And certainly, obviously a record that stood from 1936 to 1984 took a lot of beating, and it took a special talent to do it as well.
Yep,
absolutely.
Good call.
And to finish off, obviously, soccer being very topical at the moment with the World Cup, or the Women's World Cup, but we'll talk about the men's. Soccer team, Argentine superstar Lionel Messi confirms signing a rich 2-year contract with French La Liga 1 champion Paris Saint-Germain after leaving Barcelona. Currently at the moment has signed a pretty big contract over in the US with Miami and scoring some pretty important goals. Crazy stuff.
He's not exactly struggling, is he? I
No.
think he could be a sponsor for the podcast, yeah.
And he's absolutely dominating the US game at the moment, and it probably shows where he's at as probably one of the premier best players in the world. All right, mate, let's get into the extra time big finish.
Extra time, big finish.
All right, mate, we touched on it earlier with the cricket. What was happening with the ball situation in the fifth test in the Ashes?
Staggering, farcical, smelly. Could have lots of accusations, which we would have to have lawyers involved. Bizarre.
How does that happen? I mean, obviously most grounds have got to have balls at varying overs.
It's unbelievable. There's normally a box of balls, and it's very accurate on that ball, and this wasn't. It's crazy.
And, you know, England talk about being the home of cricket. You would have thought that this would have been one of the all-time lay-down misères that they would tick off on this going,
but there's
balls
normally
from...
like 5 balls of each state.
Yes.
Like 5 over, 6 over, 7. We're not talking Mickey Mouse.
Yes.
We're talking this is the elite. It was just crazy.
Yep.
And as I said, let's just wait and see what happens.
I know there has been inquiries. We're waiting on the results of some of those inquiries. Don't know where it's going to end up, but it doesn't look good from the outside, especially from a cricketing point of view. And I think it'll smarten up a lot of other venues around the world to make sure they get it right.
But Kawaja pointed out, said, hey, hang on. Let's wait and see what comes out a bit more.
All right,
I think
we'll follow up on that one for sure.
Yeah, I think the umpiring is in control and the whole thing, it's, let's move on.
Fair enough. All right, let's go to the AFL. We have a little bit of fun with this subject each week. Trade, re-sign, retire. Pendlebury, Scott Pendlebury, Dane Zorko or Dustin Martin?
Well, I wouldn't be letting Pendlebury or Martin go anywhere, but since this is fun, we've got to go on that way.
Yes.
Zorko is the obvious retirement.
Yes.
I say the Pies re-sign Scott Pendlebury,
Yes.
and Dustin Martin goes for a high draft choice to Gold Coast.
I think that's pretty much for the logic that I was going along, and I threw in an easy one this week, not a controversial one.
No.
But Pendlebury's playing some pretty good football.
Yeah.
Martin, I think, still has a little bit of value,
Yeah.
providing he wants to obviously continue.
I think he'll stay at Richmond.
And Zorko is obviously the odd one out.
Yep.
All right, the Commonwealth Games. Will they go ahead?
No.
And there you go. You've heard it first. But if they were, would the federal government step in to make it a multi-state event, or does it go to the Gold Coast in preparation for the Olympics?
I think the whole problem is that it's such a cost and no government at the moment can really go...
Justify, yep.
You just can't. I just think it's big enough. I'm not convinced that Brisbane should have bid for the Olympics, let alone the Commonwealth Games.
Yep.
The Commonwealth Games too, it's a B-grade movie compared to it now. I'm sorry. And
it is a lead-up to the events.
I get that. But,
yep.
but it's not a big event. And the thing now, years ago when we couldn't see everything, now you click on and every sport's available everywhere. Okay, yes, it is on pay TV, but it's still there, and it then goes to YouTube, whatever. It's not.
Is it a case of
we see too much.
The calendar being a little too packed?
Yes.
In that there are World Championships, and then
everything,
inter-series tests, and all these other things. Then the Commonwealth Games become a byproduct of that, and then the big one is obviously the Olympics.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I just think it's
fair call.
Yeah.
Rugby, the pay dispute ends the civil war with an in-principle agreement that has been finally reached. I believe this has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're getting there. So,
certainly hearing some of the percentages in increase of pay of players, staggering to think that Australian rugby could be this far behind when it comes to pay of their players who are their product.
Yeah, just be interested to know how much money they've got in their coffers, though. Like we've seen, national sports in Australia go under because you've got to remember just how expensive a national sport is in Australia with the airline costs and all that because we're such a big country.
Yep. Fair call.
Yeah.
Tennis, Nick Kyrgios has signed his intent that 2023 he's not going to get back onto the court, and some revelations that have come out that his mental health took a little bit of a hit during Wimbledon last year and ended up in a facility for a period of time where, he went down a pretty dark place of thoughts. And
he's a complicated character, and
as much as we give him grief for some of his
polarising,
antics,
but look, I just hope he gets himself okay. Look,
and we do give him a bit of grief for some of his antics.
Yeah.
We understand that part of it, but you're right. He's a complicated character that does things his way, and we have to respect that in how he goes about it. Do we agree with seeing some of the antics on court? Probably not, because we're talking about the inverted commas spirit of the game, and we want to see it played at the best level and with the best sportsmanship. And so there are things there that you go, yeah, all right, that's not quite right, but there is a human element to this, and Nick's only human, really, at the end of the day, and I can understand the pressure that he's under and how it has taken a toll. I'm
not convinced he's been guided correctly, mentored correctly over the years, been allowed to do too much his own thing. There's things there. So,
And tennis has got a lot better at that. I mean, back in the day, a 14-year-old player who was an absolute superstar could have played in a million events or played the entire calendar of events and tried to qualify for as many events as possible. Yeah. Now it's, that if they are showing potential at 16, 15, 16, 17, they're limited to X amount of tournaments per year. And so the ATP and WTA have done a very, very good job on that. But you're right, there needs to be some sort of checks and balances that, players do need that help, and we don't want to get to the stage now where he's in a pretty dark place.
Yeah.
All right, mate, and to finish off, the good, the bad, the ugly for this week. You're good for the week.
Matildas, I think you've got to go Matildas in terms of getting there. Because, after that loss to Nigeria in the qualifying, you thought, they could bomb here, and geez, won't that be terrible? So I think you've got to go good for them.
Yep. The bad?
Bad. Well, I know it's not this week, but we've just discussed it. I think the cricket ball's still the biggest bad, ugly fiasco we've had in sport for a fair while.
And the ugly?
No, I can't think of one at the moment.
No? Okay, cool. All right. My good is probably human nature at the moment. There's a lot of people that have been in some pretty tough situations and have reached out, and whether it be from a sporting point of view, whether it be from a personal point of view, but it's just great to see that there is still a lot of care and want to help people out in the world, and we certainly encourage that. My bad probably goes to the umpiring of the Essendon West Coast game, where it should have been recalled. It just didn't quite look good at the time, and it would have given West Coast a much-needed win and a little bit of a boost. And my ugly is just like yours, mate, the cricket ball situation. As we said, we've talked about it today already. Just did not look good in any shape or form, and was ugly as far as it goes. So.
Smelly.
All right, mate. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a huge month of everything. Correct. Glad to get you back in the studio here to talk a little bit of sport and have a little bit of fun here on the podcast. And we've covered a range of topics. As I said, we've held off our interview. We're going to squeeze that one in as part of our Past Players, Past Legends during the week segment. And as per usual, mate, we promise to do better next time, and we'll do that.
I think we'll hopefully be a bit closer together.
We will be. Thank you, mate. Thank you to everyone as well.
Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.